Cold open, Dowley. Whitfield was 41 years old and had never once in his life impressed anyone. He drove a forklift at a distribution warehouse in Ohio, ate the same turkey sandwich every day, and hadn't finished a book since high school. His ex-wife said he had the emotional range of a parking cone. His only real skill was that nothing ever seemed to bother him. Not heat, not cold, not his boss yelling, not the time a pallet of steel pipes fell 2 feet from his head and he just said, "Huh," and kept working. So when the shimmering silver disc landed in the warehouse parking lot and a voice offered him temporary contracted labor, hazardous environment compensation guaranteed, Dale didn't scream. He didn't run. He finished his sandwich, wiped his hands on his jeans and said, "Sure, beats the forklift." Warning scene. The recruiter, a translucent-skinned being with too many joints in its fingers, flickered its optical sensors in what Dale assumed was concern. "Human, you understand the survival rate for this contract class is 12%. "Mm-hmm," Dale said, signing the holographic form with his thumbprint. The listed environment contains atmospheric toxicity, extreme thermal variance, and apex predator density exceeding all charted biomes. Sounds like my mother-in-law's backyard. The being paused, processing. That is, not a translatable comparison. Don't worry about it. Dale handed back the tablet. Where do I sit? The recruiter's 4 eyes narrowed into something like pity. Very well. Strap in, human, and do not blame us if you come back to Earth in a box. Dale shrugged. I don't own anything nice enough to be shipped, so we're good. Squad introduction. The transport ship's cargo bay held 4 other contractors, and Dale, sandwich wrapper still in his jacket pocket, was, by every visible measure, the least impressive thing in the room. First was Threxka, a Varanti soldier built like an industrial refrigerator, all corded gray muscle and chitin plating along his spine. He'd survived the hollow siege of Doran 9, a campaign so brutal it was taught in 17 different military academies as a case study in what not to do, and how Threxka did it anyway. He hadn't blinked. He had no eyelids. In the 11 minutes since Dale boarded. Next was Aves, a Cerulean bioengineer whose skin shifted color with her biochemical state. Currently a deep contemplative violet, she'd single-handedly reverse-engineered a neurotoxin that had wiped out an entire research colony, then used it to cure the very disease that toxin caused. Her fingers ended in retractable, analytical probes she kept absently extending and retracting, like someone else might crack their knuckles. Third was a neuropath, a Kethrani navigator with 4 arms and compound eyes that saw in wavelengths humans didn't have names for. He'd mapped the Screaming Nebula, a stretch of space that killed ships with sound alone, and lived to draw the charts. Everyone else now used to avoid dying there. Last was Khazar, small serpentine, covered in iridescent scales, who did not walk so much as arrange herself into new positions. She was a Class 9 combat medic, meaning she'd kept soldiers alive in conditions where medical textbooks simply gave up and stopped offering advice. And then there was Dale. Average height, soft middle. No plating, no probes, no compound eyes, no combat classification. Just a guy in a company jacket that still said Whitfield Logistics across the back. Threxka looked him over the way you'd look at a possum that had wandered into a war room. This is the 5th contractor? That is correct, said Orupath, checking his manifest. Species, human. Classification, unskilled labor. Unskilled at what, specifically? Vess asked, her skin flickering a curious yellow. Dale considered the question seriously. Forklifts mostly. Nobody responded to that, because nobody had any idea what a forklift was, and somehow that silence felt like it summarized the whole mission. Comedy escalation loop. The planet's surface reaches 90 degrees Celsius at midday, Threxka said, reviewing the mission brief. Sustained exposure causes organ failure within minutes. Dale nodded slowly. Yeah, that's about what a Cleveland parking lot feels like in July. You just don't touch the metal stuff barehanded. The whole cabin went quiet. You have survived this. Repeatedly, Vess said. Every summer of my life. There are windstorms capable of stripping reinforced hull plating, Orupath added, unrolling a holographic map streaked with red warning zones. Sounds like a Tuesday in Kansas, Dale said. My uncle's got a storm cellar. You just go downstairs, wait it out, come back up, mow the lawn. You mow during this event? After, during, you play cards. Cesar's scales rippled in what Dale would later learn was the reptilian equivalent of a nervous laugh. The native fauna includes an apex predator the size of a transport shuttle, capable of tracking prey through solid rock, Threxka said, and for the first time his flat military voice had an edge in it. Dale thought about it. We got a raccoon that gets into our trash every night no matter what lock we buy. Ate through a bear-proof bin once. I respect the hustle, honestly. This is not comparable, Threxka said, though he said it slower this time like he wasn't fully sure. The atmosphere carries a spore that dissolves organic tissue within the hour. Vess said, her color draining to a warning white. Poison ivy, Dale said immediately. Touch it, forget you touched it. Rub your eye 3 days later, ruin your whole week. Does this kill humans? No, just makes you real uncomfortable and real embarrassed. There is a native insect species that lays eggs beneath the skin of large mammals. Sigzar hissed, and even Orupath's 4 eyes widened at that one. Dale actually grimaced. Okay, that one's just gross. No Earth equivalent. That one's genuinely bad. I'll give you that. The squad exchanged looks. It was disturbingly the first thing that had actually rattled him. And it wasn't even the danger. It was the grossness. The mission location experiences gravitational fluctuations, strong enough to crush unshielded structures, Orupath said, voice grim. Dale thought for a long moment. Yeah, okay, that one I don't got a comparison for either. That's new. 2, Vess said quietly to Threxka. 2 things have surprised him. I am beginning to reconsider what unskilled labor means for this species, Threxka muttered. Arrival and world reveal. The planet was called Vorkoth 9, and it looked like something had taken a nightmare and set it on fire, then frozen half of it just to be thorough. Jagged black stone stretched to a horizon lit by 2 dying red suns. The air shimmered with heat that bent light into ribbons. Every few minutes, the ground groaned like it was considering collapsing just out of spite. The moment the ramp lowered, Threxka's armor began flashing amber warnings across his chest plate. Vess's cooling suit hissed and stuttered, fighting to keep her internal temperature from spiking. Orupath's compound eyes watered behind 3 layers of protective lenses. Sarah had to coil into a shaded crevice just to keep her scales from cracking. Dale stepped off the ramp in his jacket, looked around and said, reminds me of Arizona, but rude about it. Human, Threxka gasped through his suit's speaker, voice strained. Your biosuit readings are minimal. Are you experiencing distress? Dale checked the thermometer on his wrist unit. It's warm. I'll drink more water. Your species does not require thermal regulation equipment? We got skin for that, he shrugged. Sweat does most of the work. Vess stared at him through her fogging visor like he'd just performed a magic trick. You are perspiring openly without technological assistance. Yeah, that's kind of the whole system. None of them said anything else for a while. It wasn't panic. It was the particular silence of very accomplished people quietly recalculating everything they thought they knew. The acid marsh. The squad's readings flagged a stretch of ground ahead as corrosive sludge, capable of eating through their boot plating in under 90 seconds. Full protocol required grav boards, tether lines, and a 20-minute suiting procedure. Dale looked at the marsh, looked at a fallen slab of rock nearby, and started rolling it toward the mud. Human, what are you doing? Making a bridge. We do this every spring when the creek floods behind my house. You just gotta find flat rocks and not be dumb about where you step. He crossed in 4 steps. The squad crossed in 22 minutes of tethered, sweating, cursing effort. The screamer storm. A sonic storm rolled in that could rupture eardrums and destabilize neural implants. The squad deployed sound dampening, tents requiring 6 hours of setup in a full power cell. Dale stuffed cotton batting from a supply kit into his ears and put his jacket hood up. That is, insufficient protection by every metric we possess, Orupath said. My grandpa used a jackhammer for 30 years without earmuffs. I got low expectations for my hearing already. He napped through the storm. The tent took 4 more hours to finish deploying. The frostfall, temperatures cratered overnight to levels that could freeze standard suits solid. The squad huddled around a portable reactor, running diagnostics every 10 minutes to prevent hypothermic systems failure. Dale built a fire out of dead brush using a lighter from his jacket pocket. This is basically just November. Czar, coiled as close to the flames as she dared, made a small hissing sound that Dale eventually understood was the reptilian version of, "This is somehow worse than the acid marsh, emotionally." Log entry, Vest Cerulean Bioengineer, Day 7. The human does not follow any protocol I recognize. He does not panic. He does not calculate risk in the manner our training instills. And yet he is, without exception, alive at the end of every day, often before the rest of us have finished suiting up. I am beginning to suspect our entire framework for survivability was built without accounting for a species. This unbothered, I do not know whether to be reassured or deeply unsettled, possibly both. The Bone Cliffs. The squad reached a canyon whose walls were unnervingly made of stacked skeletal remains from some ancient predator die-off, brittle, unstable, prone to sudden collapse. Standard protocol demanded a full rappel team and structural scanners. Dale eyed the cliff, found a worn game trail along its base, and just walked it. "That is not a sanctioned route," Threxka said, hauling gear behind him. "It's a deer path, or whatever made it. Animals don't walk where it's dangerous if they can help it. Just follow the smart animals." Threxka, decorated war hero of the Hollow Siege, followed the human down a path made by something with significantly fewer metals, the Silent Grove. They entered a forest where the massive predator from the earlier warning had been tracked, its presence betrayed only by unnatural stillness. No wind, no insect sound, nothing. The squad readied heavy weapons, formed a defensive perimeter, prepared for a fight that could level buildings. Dale crouched, picked up a rock, and lightly tossed it into the underbrush 30 feet to their left. Something enormous crashed away from the noise deeper into the trees. "You just threw a distraction," Vess whispered, stunned. "Deer do the same thing to bears. Make noise somewhere that ain't you. Works on anything dumb enough to chase sound instead of thinking. It worked on a creature that killed an entire scouting team of Threxka's people," Oropath said slowly. Dale shrugged. "Guess it's dumb then." Status flip. Nobody double-checked Dale's suggestions anymore. When he said, "Don't touch that plant," looks like nettles, they didn't touch it. When he said, "Storm's coming, smell that," they broke camp early, and the storm came exactly on schedule. Threxka, who had never once deferred to a non-military officer in his career, started walking a half-step behind Dale on unscouted terrain. "You are not weak," he said finally. On the 14th night watching Dale casually eat a ration bar beside a fire that would have panicked lesser soldiers. "You are simply calibrated differently." Dale considered that. "I've been called worse." Cliffhanger close. They were 3 days from extraction when Oropath's scanner let out a tone none of them had heard before, not an alert. A question. The device simply didn't have a category for what it was detecting. Something enormous was moving beneath the bone cliffs, not walking, not burrowing. Waking up. The ground shuddered once like a held breath finally released. Tsar's scales had gone stark white, a color Dale hadn't seen from her yet. "That signature," she whispered, "does not match any recorded predator on this planet." "Because it's not native," Oropath said, staring at his readings in open disbelief. "This is off-world." Dale looked out at the horizon, where the black stone had begun, very slowly, to crack. He finished the last bite of his ration bar, brushed the crumbs off his jacket, and said the only thing he could think to say. "Well, that's new."